So today we're going to focus on the idea of charity. Giving tzedakah is always a good thing. Someone else benefiting from our things is always a good thing. The Torah wants us to be able to appreciate what we have and also appreciate that we're here for a purpose and want others to also benefit, at least to an extent, from our things. And the laws of charity are kind of broad, where even if I lose $1 and someone picks it up, poor person picks it up, and I didn't know, technically, the rabbis say it's kind of a lame mitzvah because I didn't intend it, but it's still something. There's a positive lean to it because someone is benefiting from my things. But there are different levels of charity. Maimonides has 8 different levels of charity. And what we look for is the main thing is you want a person, the needy, whether it's an individual or an organization or a communal need, to benefit. And while if I gave money to a hospital because I want my name up in lights, that's obviously there's a lot of ego involved, and that's not the highest level. Sorry, so I'm going to I forgot to mute everyone. Okay. The the fact that there is that level of ego involved makes it a little less bright. We're going to talk about a more altruistic level of charity today, and I want to just share with you a piece before we get into the text here. I want to share you a little bit of Maimonides' Book of Laws. On this section is actually gifts to the poor, different types, because we have scripturally and Judaically mandated gifts to the poor. It's a tax in a way, where oops, no, that's not what I meant. I'm going where if I don't know, I'll bring it up in a second. The Torah is framed in agricultural terms. It was an agricultural society, so we have to translate it into, well, I have a law office or an engineering office or whatever it is. Or I'm on Wall Street and I'm making money and I give 10% is the standard. But in the agricultural terms, there was a tithe, which would be 2 to 3%. It really, if there was a scale, I give to the Kohen, public servant of my crops. And then I'll give 10% to the Levite. And there were a few things we had to give. And then there's those are kind of better known, they're called tithes. But then the Torah talks about different specific, not in terms of percentage, but specific gifts to the poor. And they're mentioned actually in what we read yesterday. And they're mentioned in this coming week's Torah portion too, at least a few of them. 1 second, let's take a look at this. Just get this out of the way. Okay. We'll do number 1, and this is, just look at the name of it is, I thought they would have translated, it means gifts to the poor. Okay. Look at number 1. It says, when a person harvests his or her field, he should not harvest the entire field. Instead, he should leave a small portion of the standing grain at the end of his field. A little bit. Doesn't say how much. The rabbis tell us it should be, it's ideally it's a 1/60th of the field or more, at least 1/60th. So they leave a portion of the standing grain at the end of the field. As Leviticus states, do not completely remove the grain in the corners of your field when reaping. That's in this week's Torah portion. This prohibition applies to one who reaps, and one who uproots the grain left standing is referred to as peah. Peah is a Hebrew word. It means a corner. It means so the end of the field is left, and the poor can come and they can take that produce. Then there's another one, which is called leket. Number 4. Similarly with regard to leket. When one harvests or binds sheaves of wheat, usually it's about wheat, you should not gather the stalks that fall during the harvest. So you're putting it together, and now a few just fall on the floor. A few meaning one or two. If they fall down, leave them there. Leave them for the poor, as at a stage you should not gather the gleanings of your harvest. Okay, so the Torah says, in another one that usually ends up being lumped with this one is if I bind a sheaf and I forgot it in the field. If it's a sheaf, if it's one, and if it's a minimal size, I'll leave it, and the poor can come get it. So that's mentioned in this week's Torah portion. So good morning, Steve.
Morning.
Good to see you. So now we'll go to this week's Torah portion. Text 1a. In the Torah portion that we're going to read this coming Shabbos, Torah goes through the. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you a yarmulke.
Oh, I got it. It's in the car.
So I have in my office.
You have one?
We keep yarmulke.
Stay there.
Okay. It goes through the entire flow of the holidays of the year, and it starts off. These are God's appointed holy days, holy occasions, which He shall designate in their appointed time. This ostensibly has nothing to do with what we were just talking about the different gifts to the poor. So, and since the Torah starts off, uses Passover as the beginning of the spine of holidays, of the flow of holidays, first month, the 14th of the month in the afternoon, which we call, this time of the month we call Nisan today, shall sacrifice the Passover offering to God. On the 15th day of the month is the festival of unleavened cakes, that's matzahs. To God, you shall eat unleavened cakes for a 7-day period. On the first day, there should be a holy occasion for you. You should not perform any work of labor, and you shall bring a fire offering to God for a 7-day period. Thank you very much, Dr. Carlos. On the 7th day, there should be a holy occasion. You should not perform any work of labor. Good. Now, text 1b. Hello. Okay. God spoke to Moses saying, once we've established Passover, we go to Shavuos. Right now, we're heading towards the next holiday, biblical holiday, which is Shavuos. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come to the land which I'm giving you, and all these holidays also have an agricultural representation, and that's why they're framed here as agricultural stages. Reap its harvest time. And reap its harvest, you shall bring to the Kohen an omer of the beginning of your reaping. An omer is a measure. And the first this measure, the first of your harvest, you bring as an offering to give it to the poor, to the Kohen. And from the morrow of the rest day from the day, you shall bring the Omer as a wave offering. You shall count for yourself 7 weeks. You shall be complete. That's the mitzvah we have of counting 49 days. Again, it's not relevant to what we're going to be talking about today. You shall count until the day after the 7th week, namely the 50th day, on which you shall bring a new meal offering to God. From your dwelling places, you shall bring bread. Set aside 2 loaves. We had matzah on Pesach. Now we're celebrating the new harvest of wheat, and you set aside. You bring bread, loaves of bread. 2 loaves made from 2/10 of an ephah. And this is a biblical measurement. It should be the flour. It's text 1c. And there should be a fine flour, and there should be baked leaven, the first offering to God. And associated with the bread, you should bring 7 unblemished lambs in their first year, 1 young bull and 2 rams. These shall be a burnt offering to God, along with the meal offering and libations, a fire offering, a spirit of satisfaction to God. You shall offer up a he-goat as a sin offering, and 2 lambs in the first year as a peace offering. Let's see. And the Kohen shall wave them in conjunction with the first offering as a waving below before God, along with the 2 lambs, that should be holy to God and belong to the Kohen. And you should designate on this very day a holy occasion shall be for you. You shall not perform any work of labor. This internal statute in all your dwelling places throughout your generations. We just read a lot to say that the Torah tells us to celebrate Passover, then tells us to celebrate Shavuos. What would be the next one in the spine of biblical holidays? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, then Sukkot in the fall. But the Torah actually seems to take a little bit of a detour and tells us when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not wholly remove the corner of your field during your harvesting, which is what we just said before. it tells us to celebrate Pesach. It tells us to celebrate Shavuos. And then it says, when you reap the harvest of your field, leave some for the poor at the edge of your field. And also, don't gather up the gleanings of your harvest. If something falls, leave it there for the poor. Rather, you should leave this for the poor person and the stranger. I am God. And the Torah, the Talmud tells us, the Torah tells us about how it used to work, because it was a different society, and how it theoretically would work today also is that the poor would know to come, and they would come in different stages, and it was open after the owner finished taking away their things. They came to take the rest for themselves. Okay. After this, the Torah goes on. I didn't put it over here. About Rosh Hashanah, about Yom Kippur, about Sukkot. So there is this presentation of the holidays, and there's a seemingly interruption with giving to the poor. Now, in the idea of it, one can say, and as commentaries say it, is that since the Torah is presenting to Moses is presenting to the Jewish people that when they're in the desert, and then when they come to the land, they're going to have these holidays which mark different stages in their working the land, in being able to reap the fruits of the land, the produce of the land. So there's a planting season, and there's the beginning of the budding. There's Passover, and then we go to Shavuos and say, now you're going to be able to harvest your fields. And since we're talking about coming to the land and harvesting the fields, the Torah throws in again, even though we just mentioned it last week, when you have the fields, don't forget, you have this obligation to leave things for the poor. Okay. But the primary commentary on the Torah, Rashi, he still wonders, why do you have to repeat it? I mean, what's really, what is so, when the Torah says something, we know about it. So it's not that it doesn't, his question isn't why does it fit in the flow of holidays. It's because you were talking about fields. You brought it up again, but we just told us this. So his comment is, when you reap, Scripture repeats this once again, so that one who disobeys transgresses two negative commands. In other words, we were told, don't neglect this last week. And since it came up again, talking about the fields, God says, this is really important. I'm repeating this to you. Then Rashi goes to something else, which doesn't seem totally connected thematically. He quotes that Rabbi Avardimus, the son of Rabbi Yosef, says, why does Scripture place this passage in the middle of the laws regarding the festivals, with Passover and Shavuos on one side and Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, and Sukkot on the other side? It said, even though we said it's really not that big a deal, because he mentioned fields, Rabbi Avardimus says there's got to be some significance to it. So this teaches us that whoever gives leket, the gleanings, shikha, forgotten sheaves, and peah, even though that's not mentioned here in the Torah, and peah, the corners of the field, in other words, the edges of the field, to the poor in the appropriate manner, it is deemed as if that person had built the holy temple and offered up his sacrifices within it. So, again, just in the flow of things, it kind of makes sense. And Rashi doesn't even ask the question, but he does bring up this idea that there's a significance to learn. That those holidays, Jews were focused very much on the temple. Those holidays, the scriptural holidays, they're called the 3 pilgrimage holidays, because that's when Jews would go down to spend the holidays at the temple. They would bring offerings on it. So why does the Torah bring something we knew already about gifts to the poor when talking about those pilgrimage holidays? Because the pilgrimage holidays are about a focus on the temple and bringing offerings in the temple. And the Torah wants to say that when you are not in Jerusalem, but you're in your field in Haifa or wherever you are, and you are going fulfilling the Torah laws of giving to the poor, that's its own offering. And it's not only as if it had been in the temple, but as though you had built the temple. what this rabbi of the Talmud says is that putting it here in middle of this flow of the pilgrimage holidays is meant to teach us that if you're turned on by the idea of going to the temple and bringing the offerings and all that, which we should be. It's it's intense spirituality, and intense connection with God. It's intense connection with God when you leave and when you give to the poor. Okay, now. But he doesn't say about tzedakah in general. He says it about the giving charity is not just limited to this. It's about these specific types of things.
This looks like God's taxation more than
It is taxation.
tzedakah.
Tzedakah is God's taxation.
Well, tzedakah is you give it from the heart. Here it's mandated.
Ah, great. So Aganadi is saying that tzedakah you give from the heart, and here it's mandated.
Yes. Doesn't look like.
It is mandated. Now the question: I should give it from the heart anyway. So, and this is what we're going to talk about here. That's actually exactly what we're going to be talking about here. I give charity every time I get a paycheck. I set aside 11%, and I give it to charity. Who do I give it to? I give it to whoever I want to. But there are people I want to help. There are causes I want to help. So if I feel close to an organization feeding the poor and I give that, it's a mandated thing, but I gave it where I feel meaningful. If I know someone who needs to pay for their child's wedding and they don't have enough money, and I give it to them, that's called charity, tzedakah, and I feel good about it. I have to give it somewhere, but I can give it to a place that makes it meaningful.
So tzedakah you have control over. When you leave the open corners of your field, you don't control whoever comes.
Exactly. Very good point.
Mhm.
Sit tight. That's what we're talking about. Okay.
He's taking over you, Josh.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
Can I go away next Sunday?
Yeah, Rabbi leads us to the waterfall.
Yeah, no,
We
he's
just need to drink.
he's a shill. Okay. All right. So now we're gonna go to text 6. Hang on a second. This is about charity in general, but we're getting to your point, Gennady. Text 6. This is from the founder of Chabad. He writes about generally the idea of charity. Our sages spoke highly of the mitzvah of charity, saying that in a way it's equal to all the mitzvahs combined. Not that by giving charity means I don't have to do the other mitzvah, but the power of it. The power of tzedakah is something that has the voltage like all the mitzvahs. Why is tzedakah so great? The reason is tzedakah is the ultimate mitzvah of action, surpassing all others. And we'll explain that. Why that's more of a mitzvah of action than putting on tefillin or putting up or helping someone change well, that's also tzedakah, helping someone change a tire, I guess, but or putting on tefillin. Every mitzvah serves to elevate the animal soul to Hashem. In other words, our normal human persona, our non-consciously holy self, we're refining our more normal human persona every time we do a mitzvah. But no mitzvah accomplishes this as completely as tzedakah. Tzedakah has the potential to really, really change us, to make a dent in our own self-centeredness, which is our normal orientation. With most mitzvahs, only one aspect of a person's vital energy is engaged. When I do a mitzvah, I bought a mezuzah, or someone gave me a mezuzah maybe, and I put it up. I have to take the time. I have to get my hammer and nails, and I put it in and I make a bracha. It's a mitzvah. It's not a total engagement mitzvah. And I put on tefillin. I've set aside time and I do an action. And it's only at the moment of performing the mitzvah. But when a person gives charity, gives tzedakah from their earnings, they're offering God the sum total of their effort. Every ounce of strength and time invested in earning that money is now elevated in a single act of giving. Again, conceptually, I could be giving money that I won in the lottery. But in what Rabbi Shlomo Zalman is saying is usually we work for our money. Often we work hard for our money. And now I have a pool of money. That pool of money is not just an asset, it represents my effort, my energy. And now I hear that someone in town needs $100 to buy food. Why is that my problem? I work hard, I have my money, I have food, let them go, whatever. Maybe they have a rich uncle. Why is that my problem? Torah says, it's not my problem, but I should care about it and I should help. So when I'm giving that $100, again, conceptually, assuming I work hard for my money, I'm giving away not just money. It's earned. This is, like we say, this like sweat, blood, and tears. It's my investment of myself. And giving that away is something which is giving away psychologically. It's not just about writing a check. It's giving of ourselves. Every ounce of strength and time that we've invested in earning the money. Even if someone who didn't personally toil for the money, but even so, that's if I worked for money. Let's say my uncle left me money and I'm giving a stock from that. Yes, it's not as meaningful. But even when someone who didn't personally toil for the money is still giving away something that could have sustained their physical life. Still, it's money. They could have taken me to a nice restaurant. So I could have gone to a nice restaurant or put this into a fund that'll go to Cozumel, and now I'm giving it away to someone else. So giving away the opportunity, this money of the pleasure what this money could have bought for me is also something special. It's something psychologically, it's giving away something special. And if it's not something that's something special to me, then maybe I should be giving more. Still giving away something that could have sustained their own physical life. By parting with it for the sake of a mitzvah, they're in a very real way offering their very life to God. So that's what, just as a backdrop. So this is from a great rabbi. Oh no. And I got it.
Okay.
Okay. I think this is it. Thank you very much. A great rabbi of the 15 and 1600s, rabbi known as the Maharal. He says, why is it that the rabbis make this comparison between leaving things in the field and in other words, the gifts to the poor in the field and bring offerings to the temple or building the temple? The reason behind this comparison is clear. Bringing a sacrifice, an offering, means giving one's resources to God. We're giving of ourselves to God. Not giving ourselves, but giving of ourselves and giving us something that is close to us. The same applies to giving gifts to the poor. It is in essence an offering to God. Giving away one's own money to the poor is akin to offering it to God. That's why the Torah considers these gifts as building the temple and offering a sacrifice within it. This is different from regular tzedakah. Even though the Torah obligates a person to give charity, is still given as an act of kindness out of a sense of compassion for the poor. This is the beginning of Gennadi's point. Ultimately, when I get tzedakah, I'm giving it somewhere I care about. Because I know I have to give it somewhere, but I choose where to give it. His point is, in contrast, these mandatory agricultural gifts are spiritually and psycho-spiritually more valuable because the person is obligated in the mitzvah because he's giving it give it to the stock, and you don't even get to choose who, and you're not allowed to
Watch this screen.
Yeah, thank you. You're not even by the Jewish law. I'm not allowed to go tell a friend, who's poor, I'm opening up the field tomorrow. Come today. It has to be open to everyone. So here, that makes it more altruistic and more spiritually valuable. The more a person is obligated in the mitzvah, the more its significance. As our sages teach, one who is commanded and fulfills it is greater than one who fulfills voluntarily. That's a statement of the Talmud. That if a person volunteers to do a mitzvah that the Torah doesn't command them to, it's beautiful. but it's better when you're commanded. Why? Because when you're commanded, there's a subservience. There's a surrender to God. Not that this is what I want to do. It's what God expects of me, and I'm stepping up to the plate for a responsibility.
That last sentence in the
Yeah.
second paragraph.
Yeah.
Seems a little bit strange. The reason I say that is that someone who does it out of the goodness of his heart, whether or not it's commanded,
Right.
should certainly,
It's a little, yes, and when I first studied that as a student, I remember finding that counterintuitive. But and there's true that we should not never, we don't want to at all chip away at the beauty of someone saying, I know I don't have to, but I want to do it anyway. That's an act of love. That's beautiful. But love often also has a self-serving tinge to it. I love it because it makes me feel good. One of the things, what the Talmud is driving home there is that there's a beauty to surrender. It's not because I think I find a meaning in doing this or it makes me feel good. It's someone special asked me to do this. I don't understand it. I'm not going to enjoy it. But if this is what you want, this is what you're going to get because I'm surrendering to you. That's a sense of, that's sometimes a much more difficult because, we want to do what we want to do. Morning. Sure. And the idea of being able to surrender to God itself is a very important thing. My son, just my 21-year-old.
I didn't say which one.
Yeah, he just started a job in investment banking, and he was an unpaid intern, and out of the field of the unpaid interns, they offered him a full-time job, which he's going to start in June. Meanwhile, he's still unpaid slave labor. But so, I took a walk with him yesterday. Every Shabbos we take a walk. And he was saying, I'm not even sure I want to be going to investment banking for I'm only 21. I don't know that this is what I want to do for my life. I said, you don't have to do this for your life. You don't have to do it now. But this, even if what you did now, and I think you should stick with it at least a year or two and see. So what you did was, they worked them very hard.
Who is it?
Leaving. They worked them very hard. So, and he had been living a life of a student, which isn't working so hard. So here, you took responsibility. You got up in the morning. If you got a text, because these guys are like 24 hours. If you got a text at 12 o'clock at night that someone needs to, something, you went and you opened your laptop and you did what you had to do. He's working 13, 14-hour days. I said, I don't want this for your life. I don't know if you want this for your life, but you're showing responsibility. He wasn't getting paid, and he doesn't enjoy it. He wanted the job. Okay, so there was a something for him at the end of the rainbow. I said, but showing yourself that you have the sense of responsibility to do what needs to be done. Remember by your father's funeral, I think you said about your father that you do what you got to do or something like that.
Mhm.
It's like there's a certain that's a skill and a muscle that's good to develop. I said you're 21 years old. At 21 years old, that's not something kids aren't necessarily don't train themselves in doing what you got to do. So I said this is a very valuable exercise. Investment banking, schmanking, whatever you do, you do. But whatever you're going to do, you want to be able to surrender to a goal, to an objective, and to something higher. Okay, investment banking is not surrendering to God, but it's an internal rhythm of being able to set oneself what wants to do aside. So why? Because a mitzvah is about fulfilling God's will. And here the Maral goes further. Imagine two people serving a king. One builds the king a palace, while the other plants him a garden. There's no question that the one who builds the palace is closer to the king's will because a palace is a necessity, whereas a garden is only for leisure. In other words, you're doing something more fundamental. And here he says that can be a metaphor to help us understand this. Same applies here. One is obligated from God. Their mitzvah is more aligned with God's will, for God has placed this obligation upon him as a binding decree. One who fulfills this decree that God desires is closer than one who fulfills it voluntarily without being commanded, because you did something nice, but that wasn't exactly what they asked for. After all, the fact that it's not compulsory proves that there isn't as much a desire for this action. For when a king strongly desires something, he issues a decree to have it done. But it's not issue a decree if he does not desire it as much. So if I go out, my wife asked me to well, whatever, fix something in the house that I'm able to fix. Imagine there's something like that. And then I didn't do that, but I went out and I bought her flowers. So she should thank me for the flowers, and she probably will. But she say, yeah, but what about the door handle? That's what I asked you to do. Your volunteering is beautiful, but take care of my needs. The needs I've expressed. If God says this is what I want from you, that's something special. Someone says, I know you didn't say for me, so it's not a mitzvah on me, but I want to do it anyway. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful expression of love to God. But the first thing is to say to surrender not about what I want to do, but what the loved one wants. In this case, God. So we were talking here about the different levels, Janice, of giving to the poor that the Torah describes. And the agricultural terms, we leave parts of the field to the poor. So this is why giving gifts to the poor is considered like offering a sacrifice. The Torah obligates a person to give these gifts, making an absolute divine decree. So the gifts to the poor are not we're giving gifts to the poor sounds great. I have $100 set aside, and I find who I want to give it to. In leaving the edges of my field, or leaving the gleanings on the ground, and then going, and then the poor come to take it, I don't get to choose who to give it to. It doesn't feel as good because I don't know who got it. But there's a beauty to it, because then it's just surrendering to the idea of charity. It's not that I like you and I'm happy to help you, which is what I do generally with my tzedakah, because I like this, I know who I'm giving to, and I feel good. Why shouldn't I choose? But here there's an element of giving to tzedakah when I'm not choosing. It's just I'm letting other people suffer, benefit. This is why giving to the poor is considered like offering a sacrifice. The Torah obligates a person to give these gifts, making an absolute divine decree. Since God fully desires this act, it is like one offering a sacrifice, giving directly to God. God never told me, us in this day, to do anything, because we don't have that mitzvah of today, especially outside of Israel, this idea of leaving the corners of the field. So I have a mitzvah to give tzedakah. So I when I get a paycheck, I have a certain amount, and I give it to who I want to give it to. That's the mitzvah. But in this mitzvah, this agricultural mitzvah, as it was practiced, and probably to an extent still practiced in Israel today, the idea of leaving tzedakah on leaving the edges of the field for people I don't know taught us something about charity. Because what happens if someone comes in and says to me today, and says someone in a community who has to remain anonymous really needs help? Well, something, not someone in your community, someone I know who you may not know really needs help. They're in dire circumstance. So I don't even get the pleasure of knowing who I helped. Giving that kind of tzedakah, there's a special flavor to it. In short, since God himself commanded these gifts to be given, they entirely fulfill his will. And that is why they are considered as if one has brought a sacrifice to him.
What will it translate to the modern society when you don't have a field necessarily, but you need to leave a random tzedakah for random people?
I'm not sure it is today.
No, that'll happen today.
But if you know something, when you walk into any synagogue, there's a box there. If I put a quarter in or $1, I don't know who I'm giving it to. If I give it to, that's why I know that the synagogue chooses, and I trust them. Or if I give it to a group that feeds the poor in Israel, I know generally where it's going. So, but it's not. There isn't that that flavor that's so direct, but it's teaching me that, like, I know Malki and I, we have this, understanding between ourselves. We give to charities that we want to, which is good. But we're on when we go on a website, a community website, and they'll have sometimes, this family that faces a tragedy, and they're doing a fundraising for them. We don't know them, but you know something? We're going to give them $18, even though I don't know them. I don't plan on knowing them, but it's some, and maybe don't be it's a sham. But the fact is that I don't want it to only go places where I feel good about. I want to give it. I just want to give it.
But it's still not the same because you have chosen.
Right. There is
We're
no.
talking around, like,
There is no equivalent.
like in Dubai, every supermarket has a section. Small, like a refrigerator, it's not reasonable size refrigerator, where they have for poor people. Poor people can come in and take stuff out of it.
Really?
Yes,
Very nice.
so that's pretty random.
It's like the Nebuch table right away.
Yeah.
Pretty random.
It's a nice idea.
It could work in Jewish stores.
Which, yeah, they can do in Borough Park in Williamsburg. Maybe they do. Don't know. Text 8. It's possible. With regular charity, it's possible that the money a person donates was earned without much effort, perhaps through an easy business deal, an inheritance, or even by chance. The significance of the act lies in the fact that since this money could have been used to sustain one's own life, we could have bought pleasures for ourselves. So giving it away is considered as if he's offering his very life. But it's not like I'm giving away money that he necessarily worked so hard for. That's something we spoke about before. But it doesn't always work that way, right? I got a refund from my taxes. It's or again, an inheritance. But when it comes to the grain, he gives away as payah at the edge of the field that left for the poor, and leket fell on the ground. This is something that came through hard labor. The farmer plowed, planted, watered, and harvested, all in fulfillment of the decree that by the sweat of your brow you shall eat bread. And that's why Rabbi Avdimus is teaching in the Torah's Kodenim, in the Medrash, that giving these gifts is considered as if the temple stood and a person offered a sacrifice inside it, applies primarily to these agricultural gifts rather than to ordinary charity. This was a very specific, beautiful expression of caring that the Torah taught us last week, repeats this week in the flow of the holidays to emphasize it, because you're right, we don't have the modern day equivalent, but it taught us something morally. That we still have. That when we give, we should give with a sense not only of I appreciate, the cause or the person I'm giving to, but because this is a mitzvah. It's not just because I give to a friend. If you need something, I give it to you. It's between me and you. What does it have to do with God? But it should have to do with God. I should recognize that it's not, I'm giving you because I happen to like you and you were friends, but I would be willing to help someone else even if it didn't. That's really the mind game.
The Torah is timeless. So even though the lessons seem to apply to the agrarian time of the Jews, it should be able to project for the future. And we don't seem to understand that lesson.
So all Torah lessons, many things in the Torah that were tied to the temple are no longer physically functional, physically applicable, materially applicable. But the lessons absolutely do. And that's why we need to go through those exercises in our mind to be able to do that, to find a certain selflessness even in our charity.
Is the fact of giving to the Kohanim, the temple, what have you, considered more virtuous in part because presumably a portion of that will be given out as charity and thus will be anonymous to the person who originally gave it?
I'm not. That's an interesting thought. I don't know that we think that and I don't know. I don't know that that's necessarily, I don't think I've ever seen it put it that way, but that's an interesting thought. That the anonymity has a value because it means there's less of me involved. And in Maimonides' words, with these gifts to the poor that we had read about before in Maimonides, provide no personal, see this, it was the laws of gifts to the poor, that's what we were reading before. We did, I think, number 1 and number 5. If we scroll down a little bit more, number 8 says, these gifts to the poor provide no personal benefit to the owner. The poor come and take them against the owner's will. Just leave it. That's the point. I wouldn't say against the owner's will, but without the owner's will. It has nothing to do with what he wants. You just have to leave it. In contrast, Meiser Oni, there was a different type, a tithe that they had to set aside for the poor, that you gave it to the poor you like. I had to give 10% of my crop. Was less than 10%, but I had to give 10% of my crop to the poor. But with that, I gave to the poor I want. I have a neighbor who's poor, a cousin who's poor. I gave it, so I feel good about it. And that's great. That's the mitzvah. But here there was a special twist. You're giving it, you don't even know who's getting it, because that element is something. Even if we don't do it anymore in that way, but it brings to mind that it's not only about us. Religion is about doing what we have to do, and hopefully we enjoy it, but it's not just about something that makes me feel good.
There is no attachment when you give anonymous.
Right.
Because otherwise you give somebody personally, you feel obligated that he owes you something, because you give it to them.
When you give someone,
Yeah.
you strengthen a relationship, and there's a beauty to it. And sometimes that's exactly what you want to do. When we give gifts on food gifts on Purim, you give some gifts to a friend. Doing it anonymously actually doesn't fulfill the mitzvah.
Yeah.
Because the whole point was about fostering friendship. The person who got it doesn't know who to thank, doesn't know who to feel gratitude to. That's a good thing. It's a good thing that we're strengthening our relationships. We're not knocking that. Yeah. We're putting in that there's also an element of extending ourselves, and it's important to extend ourselves even if we're not getting anything out of it.
The other more, you say better, the other thing that you leave the things in the field.
Yeah.
That's a better consideration.
So that exercises a certain psycho-spiritual part of ourselves where we're giving and we don't even know, and we don't choose. We have to give, and we don't get to choose who it goes to.
It's interesting. We had a call a couple days ago from Hank Capital.
Yeah.
He said, "Who's for you?" I said, "What?" He said, we have money left over from the sales, and so I won the lottery. It's $3,000 per family. Oh, great. My first thought was, I could use the money now with funerals and everything. You reminded me that it's got to go somewhere. And I was thinking how I was going to distribute it. And I thought that when you talk about the anonymity, there's different levels, sending some money here, sponsoring kiddish, whatever. But then I felt the Hebrew Burial Society. Like you said, then you don't know who's benefiting from it. So all different levels. But then again, I remember you said that, if somebody here won the lottery $1 million and they wanted to give it to you, you gotta be careful because they want to give it anonymously. And you said it's better that, all right, I sponsored the water fountain or whatever it is. So then it encourages other people.
Right. So there are competing values. There's no question. We don't want to put our ego into the giving of charity, and we shouldn't be doing it for an ego reason. But at the same time, sometimes we have to have the self-sacrifice. I remember, whenever for years I'd ask someone if they'll agree to be honored at a dinner. So, Rabbi, I don't want any attention. I say, great, that makes you a perfect candidate. If You don't want, if you don't want attention and you're doing it just to inspire other people, that's exactly what we want. Because in the words of our sages, it's a mitzvah to publicize those who do mitzvahs, not because they get to strut around, because that inspires other people to do a mitzvah. So it's
Double-edged sword.
yeah. So we're balancing values. Okay. So in this, Meister Oni would say that this is Meister Oni means the tithe to give to the poor. That grants the owner some benefit because they retain the right to choose which poor person receives it. But this is, but that's not the case in the one with the edge of the field. So here, and in Jerusalem Talmud. So this is from the Rebbe points out why Rashi brings up that guy with an interesting name, Rabbi Arvedimus, that he said that when a person is careful about that type of very selfless charity, and so they built the temple and they brought the offerings. So the Rebbe pointed out that the Talmud elsewhere says that Rabbi Yehuda from Chutzi hid in a cave for 3 days. In other words, it doesn't mean hid in a cave. It means he went into contemplation, into meditation for 3 days, seclusion. He's trying to find the reason why the needs of one town take precedence over the needs of another town. In Torah law, it says that if I have charity to give, and there are people in my town who need it, then that takes precedence of people in another town. I have to take care of my own first. And he felt, that's a little... it seems also a little self-serving. Why the person needs it, maybe the person in the other town needs it more. Why am I giving to mine first? Take care of my own first. Came to a great Rabbi who asked him, where have you been? He said, I was hiding in the cave for 3 days because I wanted to find the reason why one town's needs take precedence over another. Rabbi Yosef called his son Rabbi Arvedimus. That's the same one who had been quoted in the other quote we had earlier in the class. And said to him, answer, what is the reason why one town's needs take precedence over another? Rabbi Arvedimus said to him, the verse in Numbers states, these 6 cities shall be, each town shall live, and only afterwards the surroundings around it. So we're not going to look at it inside, but from the phrasing of the Torah, you can read that it's there's one town has to live, and then afterwards we think about the other town's life. So Rabbi Arvedimus he pointed out that there's a value to choosing to give to my own before I give out. But this is the same guy who said, even though that's true, there's something really special in being given a mitzvah where we have to leave the corners of our fields and we don't get to say, well, it goes to someone from my town or my block or someone I care about. I don't know who got it. Because there's the idea of trying to push away our personal interests. If you look in text 12, the Talmud tells us, come in here. That's the language of the Talmud. Let's come and study. It says, if one encounters a friend whose animal collapsed and it is necessary to unload its burden, and one also encounters an enemy who needs assistance to load a burden onto his animal, the mitzvah is to first assist the enemy in order to subjugate one's evil inclination. Even though I have 2 people down the road, I see on the road, each one needs help with their animal struggling. One's a buddy and one I can't stand. So the idea that I'm going to help the person I can't stand, that's one thing. But I go first, and why would I go first then? It's not that their need takes precedence. It's that the Torah is saying, use this as an exercise. Use this as an exercise to find your own selflessness. When you're helping your friend and their animal, so then you're working, but you're helping someone you care about. Helping someone you really don't like, that's like, why am I here? I'm here because God wants me to help another person.
Yeah, but if it comes to a choice, not helping that poor animal that's collapsed.
Both, they both collapsed. They both collapsed. They both collapsed. And now we're saying to choose the animal of the enemy to do first. Go to the friend later.
No, but what he's saying here is to load the burden on an enemy's animal.
Well,
as opposed to unloading.
So it's even more. Okay, yeah. In other words, the question was to assist, to assist, they both need help. And here was going to assist the enemy first and then go to the friend. That's not general, like you say, you help your own first. But here it's something, it's an exercise for one's own selflessness. Text 13. This is from a quote from the previous Rebbe. He writes here that on the 12th of Tammuz, which is his birthday, he's speaking. This is a quote from he's speaking at a gathering of Hasidim, and he said, "Previously, I told you about a small note in which the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was a young child, asked his grandfather, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, several questions during a private audience. This likely took place around the years 1805, 1806. The previous Rebbe was very precise in his details of stories. He wanted them to come to life and be remembered accurately. Essence of Chabad Hasidic life. And the founder of Chabad answered, the entire purpose of Chabad Hasidic life is to modify, change one's natural character traits, to work on ourselves, to see what needs work on ourselves, to see whatever, which traits we need to be able to elevate and modify and refine. Hasidic thought demands that one who studies it must actively refine and transform the natural character. But Hasidic thought is not merely a teacher that instructs a person how to do it. It's the very force that drives this transformation. This answer defines the highest purpose of Hasidic thought, its ultimate goal. No matter how deep and intellectual the teachings of Hasidus may be, no matter how much it broadens one's understanding or how profound its insights into the divine soul, which is, after all, a literal part of God above, it all boils down to one thing: changing one's natural character. Turn it over and over, for everything is in it. This is the core of Chassidus. It opens the eyes and reveals the truth in everything. Chassidus teaches that sin and wrongdoing are not merely an offense against God. The word chet, sin, actually means a deficiency. Something is missing, something's off balance. The word avon, iniquity, means distorted. Something's been bent out of shape. And what we want to do is fill that gap within us, or properly reshape what has been bent out of shape. And there's a tradition from the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, in the name of Rabbi Saadia Gaon from the 7th century. Humans were created to break, really to refine their negative qualities and natural tendencies. So 1 second, we have a question in the chat. I didn't see it before. Apologize. Okay, sorry, Leanna, it's just so now. Acknowledging that this was an agricultural society where persons of other professions given similar opportunity. In other words, were fishermen expect to lead some of the caught fish for the poor, categories of that cattle? No. Good question, Leanna. We don't find it. And like I said, we don't find it today either. The Torah is framed in agricultural things, and so there's no mitzvah per se, and the rabbis don't see any mitzvah per se, a directive, a direct obligation, but there's a lesson to fishermen and cattle growers and rabbis and the postal workers and lawyers and doctors, all of us, the one we give our charity, to bear in mind the lessons of what we have from the 6th Torah portion, where that we want to keep try to keep a certain selfless element. It's not only us giving, someone to whom we really care about and love, and it feels good. That's really good, and I don't want to temper that, but to recognize that we should do it even when it doesn't feel good.
This actually refers back a little bit to a question I asked you several months ago about shotness.
Okay.
Again, agricultural society. Shotness refers specifically to materials that were available at that time.
Yes.
Now, for the same principle, shouldn't fibers that are man-made be considered in the same context?
You know, we don't really, we don't add to Torah that way. The idea is we want to take the lessons of Torah, and that's sharpness is one that is considered a super rational mitzvah. So there, especially like if it's super rational, I don't even understand how I'm applying one to. I have to understand the first one before I can apply it somewhere else. So I've never seen that, and I don't think anybody would come up with that. But here, where there's something that's not super rational, it's teaching us about a certain rhythm. The idea is that if I see a need, or I'm told of a need, and it's someone I don't know, someone I don't care about, but I can spare the $10 they need, I should do it because it's right, not only because I care about them. Because here I don't care about them individually, but God wants me to be able to share my things to make other people more comfortable. Any questions?
Yes, it's still in my mind that we're not getting the full understanding of the lesson from Torah, even though by God, and there's got to be in that lesson a way to project this thing in the current society.
Or the lesson is you should pray for Mashiach so that we have it again, and then you'll be able to have your field and leave for the poor.
So Moshiach's time we're gonna all revert to agrarian society. Is that what you're telling me?
Some people will, and you'll be able to. You can at least be a partner in a field.
Mhm.
Yes,
I have a question.
sure.
So what does 14 really mean?
Take the last one.
Yeah.
It means this is the Baal Shem, the founder of the Hasidic movement, is quoting one of the post-Talmudic, one of the great rabbis of the post-Talmudic era. What he's saying is that this is all we all have. Everybody has. If we look at ourselves, we see that there's a lot of good, but there are things we have tendencies that really are not good, are not helpful. Whether it's in how we see ourselves, or it's how we relate to others, or relate to God, whatever it is. So instead of just saying, okay, there's me, and I got a couple of points, nobody's perfect. You're right, nobody's perfect. We're not supposed to beat ourselves up. But we say, I can do better. And I have to work with that tendency and try to overcome it.
My question is really about humans were created
Yeah,
to break that
confusing.
pattern.
Yeah, I didn't like the translation exactly, but I think what Rabbi Sajagon was saying is that a purpose of our creation, of our existence, is that God gives us a personality to upgrade, to refine. Say, okay, I'm a jealous person, done, but the other stuff also. Work on the jealousy. See a therapist, do something to. There are things that we can do. We can. It's in other words, don't just relax. We want self-acceptance is a good thing, but self-acceptance doesn't mean that we should ignore parts of us that poke other people in the eye. Maybe I can do better. And
I got caught with the work.
yeah, it's another. And Hasidic thought sees it also is if today, what I did was I contemplated and I about how to frame things different to get control of my temper. Let's say I had a temper problem, and today I managed to discipline myself and not explode like I would have another day. That's a good day. That's part of my reason for existence. Maybe no one out there knows it, but between me and God, I'm now I'm upgrading the personality He gave me.
I'm thinking of it as humans were created with the ability
But
to.
that's true. It's with the
not
ability,
that-
but besides going to saying this is a purpose. I want to note that Steve is in the middle of Shiva. Unfortunately, John had passed away, and I think we all were with you. I have a camera crew here that I have to go do a thing I want to put on tefillin, but not gonna be able to stay for long, but
He
didn't want to
killed
leave
me
it.
with the thing about my,
Yeah,
A, that you remember.
yeah, yeah. It struck me. It was a long time ago. I remember
And
it.
B, it was like, gee, you know, Steve, I got a picture in my pocket of you and your dad.
Yeah,
Like, see,
I remember it. I remember it.
The
Wish
point-
you well and only happiness going forward.
The point I got
Good
out
week,
of-
everyone.
The point I got out of 14